The alien warlord gave his crippled daughter to the strongest human slave. No one expected his choice. The galaxy had always whispered about Warlord Karzun, a conqueror whose name alone could freeze even the fiercest warriors. His ships patrolled countless star systems, and entire civilizations had bent to his rule. Yet, for all his power, there was one problem he could not conquer: his daughter Valeera. She was born with a fragile gravitic spine, unable to stand for long periods under the heavy gravity of their home world. In Karzun's society, weakness was not a personal matter. It was a threat to legacy, a stain on the name of a conqueror. And Karzun, for all his triumphs, could not allow that stain to remain. Valeera had grown used to her world from her hovering chair, surrounded by tutors and aides who whispered both fear and pity. She had always been aware of the eyes of the court upon her, filled with judgment and curiosity. She was quiet, careful, and never demanded more than what she could manage. Still, even her father's most loyal lieutenants could not hide their dissatisfaction. Karzun needed a solution, one that would satisfy the expectations of the people without dishonoring his family name. It had to be public, it had to be symbolic, and it had to demonstrate strength. During this time, humans were known as peculiar beings. They were physically weaker than most alien species, slower in their recovery from injuries, and fragile in appearance. Yet, they were cunning, stubborn, and capable of astonishing endurance. Karzun had a collection of human slaves captured from border conflicts, but most were unremarkable. There was one exception: Elia's ward, a human of extraordinary resilience. He had survived conditions that would have broken others and gained a reputation not through speed or brute force, but through patience, adaptability, and an indomitable will. He was not a hero in the eyes of the aliens, only a tool, a curiosity. Yet humans had a way of defying expectation, and Elias had done so again and again, leaving the aliens wary and unsettled. The day of the public decision arrived. The arena was vast, illuminated by the dim glow of alien suns, and filled with thousands of spectators who had come not for sport, but to witness the humiliation, or perhaps the salvation, of Karzun's daughter. The warlord stood at the center, a towering figure with scaled skin glistening under the light. Valeera hovered beside him, her chair steady, her eyes calm but wary. Every courtier and soldier held their breath as Karzun spoke, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the arena. "My daughter Valeera," he said, "has lived too long under the shadow of weakness. In our world, strength is survival. In our world, survival is honor. Therefore, she will be entrusted to the strongest among the captured humans. Only through their strength may she rise above her limits." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some believed the strongest human was a brute, fierce and unfeeling. Others whispered about Elia's ward, though few had ever seen him in person. When Karzun gestured to the line of human slaves, most trembled, all but one. Elias stepped forward slowly, his eyes on Valeera. Unlike the others, he did not look at her with fear, disgust, or pity. He looked at her with recognition of potential, of a life that had not yet begun. The warlord raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Do you accept this task, human?" His voice carried the weight of worlds. "Do you accept the burden of my daughter's life?" Elias' response was measured. He did not bow, he did not kneel. Instead, he simply said, "I will not let her fall, but I will need time and tools to do it properly." The crowd erupted into whispers. Tools, time. This was not what they expected. The warlord narrowed his eyes. "You presume to choose how she is handled." "I presume nothing," Elias replied. "I only request the ability to ensure she thrives, not merely survives." Valeera studied him silently. She had always known that humans were unpredictable, often underestimated. She had not expected anything grand from them. Yet there was a quiet confidence in his voice, a calm determination that made her heart quicken with hope. Perhaps, she thought, this human would not see her as a burden but as a person. Perhaps she had waited her whole life for this moment. For the first time in many years, Karzun hesitated. He had expected fear, panic, anger, maybe refusal. But what he saw in Elias was neither fear nor defiance. It was focus, clarity, and respect. The human did not see Valera as weak. He saw her as someone whose life was worth effort. The warlord allowed a thin smile to cross his scaled lips. Perhaps there was entertainment in this after all. The arena fell silent as the human began his work. He did not rush or stumble. He observed Valera, studied the movement of her chair, the strain in her muscles, the patterns of her attempts to stretch and balance. Other humans in the crowd, fellow slaves, watched with astonishment. Many had expected failure, abuse, or ridicule, yet Elias treated Valera with precision and patience. He sketched diagrams in the dirt with a stick, noting angles, leverage, and weight distribution. He requested materials, light alloys, hydraulic supports, magnetic stabilizers. Slowly, he began constructing a device that would allow Valera to move more freely, more naturally, and without pain. The audience watched, fascinated and confused. The human, whom they had deemed weak, was reshaping the life of an alien princess before their eyes. Karzun's advisors whispered nervously. Some thought the human had gone mad, while others began to recognize a method in his actions. Valera herself could barely contain a smile. For the first time, she felt the possibility of independence, not just assistance. She could rise, even if the aliens had called her weak. Days passed, each one filled with quiet labor and careful testing. The arena was transformed into a workshop of sorts, with Elias at the center. He worked tirelessly, often with Valera guiding him, her hands steady, her mind alert. Each adjustment brought her closer to standing on her own. The people of the court began to murmur in astonishment. The human was not merely helping her walk, he was redefining what she could do. The turning point came when Valera rose from her chair using the device Elias had perfected. The entire arena held its breath. Slowly, carefully, she took her first steps. Not perfectly, but without strain, without pain, and without fear. Elias supported her only lightly, ready to adjust at a moment's notice. The crowd gasped. Even Karzun, who had seen countless victories and defeats, felt a pang of surprise. Valera stopped in the center of the arena, her eyes meeting her father's. She did not bow or kneel. She smiled, small but resolute, and for the first time she spoke. "I can stand. I can walk. I can move forward." The audience erupted in astonishment. Humans had never been praised for more than brute resilience or cunning. Yet this human, this slave, had elevated Valera beyond what even her father had expected. Karzun's heart, often hardened by conquest, thudded with a strange and unfamiliar pride. He had not anticipated this outcome. He had expected humiliation, but instead he had witnessed a transformation. Elias remained quiet, his focus still on Valera, ready to assist if needed. He did not seek praise, nor did he bow to the court. He only looked at Valera and nodded as if to say, "We are not done. This is only the beginning." Valera returned the nod, understanding that she had been given more than mobility. She had been given choice, autonomy, and hope. As the sun set over the arena, the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Karzun and his daughter alone with the human who had defied all expectations. For the first time, the warlord realized that strength was not measured in conquest, not in fear, not in domination. Strength was in patience, ingenuity, respect, and the refusal to yield to expectation. He had given his daughter to a human slave, expecting humiliation. Instead, he had witnessed humanity in its finest form, resilient, clever, and unyielding. And as the stars began to twinkle above the alien world, Valera stood taller than ever before, supported by no one but herself and guided by a human who had already proven that sometimes the greatest victories were not won on the battlefield, but in the quiet, persistent effort to help another rise. The arena doors closed behind them, but the story had only begun. Elias knew the real challenges lay ahead. The galaxy did not expect a human to elevate an alien princess. They did not expect what humans were capable of. But Elias and Valera, now beside him, would soon show them all that underestimated beings often carried the greatest power. And the universe would take notice. The days after Valera first stood were filled with quiet determination and new challenges. The arena had become a place not of spectators and whispers, but of learning and discovery. Elias continued his careful work, refining the devices that allowed Valera to move with increasing independence. Every adjustment brought her closer to walking freely, climbing stairs, and even running for short bursts. She amazed the court daily, and what once was considered a symbol of weakness was slowly transforming into a living example of possibility. Valera's confidence grew with every step. She discovered that she could stand without constant support, feel the subtle shifts of her own balance, and even attempt basic exercises that no one thought possible for her species. With Elias guiding her, she learned to trust herself, her body, and her intelligence. She began to speak more freely, asking questions about the world beyond her palace, about the humans who lived and survived under conditions far harsher than her own, and about the ways in which strength could be measured. Elias answered with patience, sharing human perspectives, simple yet profound, on endurance, problem-solving, and the value of life that is not measured by fear but by effort. Word of Valera's progress spread quickly. The noble council, which had once doubted her every move, watched with growing curiosity and unease. Aliens who had scoffed at humans as weak and inferior were beginning to see the truth in a new light. A single human, one they had intended as a tool, had changed the fate of the Warlord's daughter. Karzun, who had been a strict observer until now, felt a quiet pride but also a cautious apprehension. He had always been certain of his control, yet here was a human teaching his daughter, guiding her, and transforming her in ways he could not fully predict or command. One morning, Elias presented Valera with a new device. It was lighter than the previous model, designed for longer journeys and more active movement. She was to walk through the gardens for the first time, away from the arena and the constant watch of the court. Her excitement was mingled with nervousness. For years she had been confined, reliant on aids and devices that only allowed minimal movement. Now she would test herself in open space, among unfamiliar paths and gentle slopes. Elias guided her carefully. "Remember," he said softly, "you are in control. I am here, but only if you need support. Trust yourself." Valera nodded, her hands gripping the handles lightly. She began walking, step by step, feeling the earth beneath her and the air in her lungs. Each movement required focus, but with each step her confidence grew. Flowers brushed against her fingertips, birds flew overhead, and the sound of rustling leaves became a gentle rhythm guiding her forward. She turned to Elias with a bright smile, one of genuine joy and accomplishment. "I never thought I could feel like this," she said. Elias smiled back, a rare, quiet expression of satisfaction. Humans know that strength is not always the same as power. It comes from persistence, from facing what seems impossible, and from never giving up. Meanwhile, Karzun observed from a distance. His daughter, once considered fragile, was now moving independently, learning, and even laughing. He began to understand that strength was not measured solely by the ability to conquer others, but by the ability to rise, to adapt, and to improve. In his court, a transformation was quietly taking place. Aliens who had once seen humans as weak were reconsidering their assumptions, and the strongest human, Elias, had done this without violence, without demands, simply by applying intelligence, patience, and care. The turning point came when a group of alien nobles visited the garden. They had come expecting to witness failure or dependence. Instead, they found Valera walking confidently, guiding herself with minimal support, and even assisting Elias in adjusting her device for smoother movement. The nobles whispered among themselves, unsure how to react. The human had not only exceeded their expectations, but had also elevated Valera beyond what they thought possible. Karzun stepped forward, his voice carrying authority but also a hint of admiration. "You have done what none expected, human. You have taken my daughter who was called weak and shown that strength can take many forms." Elias nodded, his calm demeanor unchanged. "I only gave her the tools and guidance. She did the rest. Strength lives within, not in appearances." The warlord's advisors were stunned. They had believed humans were only tools of brute labor or obedience. Yet here was proof that their ingenuity, patience, and problem-solving skills could surpass the expectations of the mightiest species. Some whispered that the human might deserve freedom, but the idea was met with doubt. Could Karzun truly let go of the one who had so dramatically altered perceptions of his family and his rule? Elias surprised everyone again. He did not demand freedom, wealth, or recognition. Instead, he asked for something unexpected, a chance to continue helping other humans in the warlord's captivity. "If I can help Valera rise, I can help others do the same. Freedom should not come from luck or strength alone. Every human deserves a chance to reach their potential." Karzun considered this, a rare pause settling over him. His daughter had risen, thanks to the human's guidance. Could he now extend that opportunity to others? The warlord was known for his decisiveness, yet he sensed a larger victory here, one not of conquest but of transformation. He nodded slowly. "Very well. You may continue your work, not just with my daughter but with all humans under my control. Show me that their potential can be realized." The next weeks were filled with activity. Elias worked tirelessly, not just with Valera but with other humans in the warlord's custody. He taught them basic engineering, ways to adapt to alien technology, and principles of teamwork and problem-solving. Slowly, the humans began to rise in confidence. They built devices, repaired equipment, and even assisted in maintaining the facilities that once imprisoned them. Aliens who had once viewed them as weak or expendable now looked on with surprise and, in some cases, respect. Valera, too, flourished. She walked without support, spoke confidently in council meetings, and even began participating in training exercises with Elias guiding her. She had discovered a joy in her own capability, and a quiet strength that came not from brute force but from perseverance, learning, and the support of someone who believed in her. Together, she and Elias became a symbol of unexpected potential, a living demonstration that assumptions about strength and worth could be challenged and redefined. The final test came when a crisis threatened the warlord's court. A nearby rebellion had mobilized, and scouts reported an approaching fleet. Many expected chaos, panic, or a show of fear. Instead, Valera and Elias acted with calm determination. Using the tools they had created, they coordinated evacuation routes, reinforced structures, and trained the human captives to assist in ways that minimized risk. The humans, once prisoners, now played a crucial role in defending lives and property. Their ingenuity, discipline, and adaptability became the deciding factor in protecting the court until reinforcements arrived. Karzun observed all this, his usual pride tempered by awe. The human he had once dismissed as a slave had proven indispensable. His daughter, once thought weak, had become a capable and confident leader. The warlord realized that power was not always wielded through force. It could be built through trust, collaboration, and the willingness to see potential where others saw only limitation. When the danger passed, the court gathered to recognize the contributions of those who had made a difference. Karzun spoke with a voice carrying both authority and humility. "Today, I have seen the truth of strength. It is not in domination or fear. It is in ingenuity, persistence, and the courage to rise above expectation." The humans among us, led by one remarkable individual, have shown us what it means to be strong. We are reminded that the universe does not belong to the strongest alone, but to those willing to strive and to believe in themselves. Elias stood quietly, watching Valera smile, her confidence and joy evident to all. He had done more than help her walk. He had shown a path forward, one where capability was nurtured, potential recognized, and strength measured not by power alone, but by persistence, compassion, and cleverness. Valera had grown beyond expectation, and in doing so, she inspired everyone around her. The story of the human who had been given the weakest daughter spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations heard of Elias Ward and his accomplishments, of the girl who had risen against the odds, and of the lesson that humans could be underestimated at their peril. Across the stars, whispers carried the same message. Humanity was not to be judged by appearances, by size, or by speed, but by ingenuity, endurance, and the refusal to give up. Elias' work continued, quietly and persistently. Humans who had once been prisoners now learned, built, and grew alongside their alien overseers. Valera led by example, walking among them, guiding them, and showing that even those who were once considered weak could become strong, not through force but through knowledge, patience, and determination. And in the quiet moments when the stars shone brightly over the Warlord's domain, Valera would walk through the gardens, free of support, laughing, learning, and discovering the joy of movement. Elias would follow, guiding not with dominance but with encouragement and wisdom. Together, they had redefined what strength could mean. Together, they had shown the galaxy that human ingenuity and heart were forces to be reckoned with. The universe had expected weakness. Instead, it had witnessed humanity at its finest. The months after Valera's first independent steps brought a quiet revolution across Karzun's court. The humans who had once been prisoners were no longer seen as tools or curiosities. They were learners, builders, and partners. Each day, Elias taught them new ways to adapt, create, and solve problems. Valera learned alongside them, becoming not just a student but a leader. Her confidence had grown into something deeper, a calm assurance that her abilities were no longer limited by the expectations of others. Valera began to explore her world with Elias at her side. They moved beyond the arena and the gardens into the wider expanse of the palace grounds, then to the surrounding training fields. Elias adapted techniques from human engineering to alien technology, creating mobility aids and support devices that allowed Valera and other humans to work alongside the aliens in meaningful ways. For the first time, Valera saw the world not as a place that limited her, but as a place full of opportunity. The alien court watched closely. Many remained skeptical, bound by tradition and prejudice. They had expected humiliation, chaos, or failure. Instead, they saw a human and an alien girl achieving what they had been told was impossible. Karzun, ever the conqueror, had spent decades shaping worlds through power and fear. Yet now he observed something different, progress built not by force but by patience, intelligence, and trust. It unsettled him at first, but the results were undeniable. One day, while Valera and Elias were testing new mobility devices for the humans, word came of a distant threat. A fleet of mercenaries from a neighboring system was advancing, hoping to exploit perceived weakness. The aliens were used to handling attacks with brute force, but Elias saw an opportunity for strategy over strength. He quickly organized a plan, involving humans and aliens working together. Humans used their knowledge of engineering to reinforce structures, create decoys, and reroute energy flows. Valera coordinated the efforts with precision, directing both humans and aliens to positions where their efforts would have the greatest impact. The approaching fleet arrived under the cover of night. Many expected panic, but instead, the humans and Valera moved calmly. their combined effort transforming the palace into a fortified stronghold without unnecessary violence. When the mercenaries attempted to breach the perimeter, they found themselves countered by systems that humans had helped to design: traps, diversions, and rapid response measures that protected lives without destruction. The invaders were forced to retreat, unable to overcome the ingenuity and coordination of a group they had underestimated. The alien nobles were stunned. They had always relied on raw strength and intimidation. Now they saw a human and a single alien girl coordinate defenses that neutralized a superior force. The lesson was clear: strength could take many forms, and underestimating humanity was dangerous. Karzun, standing among his advisors, could not hide his surprise. His daughter had grown far beyond the fragile figure he had once worried about, and the human who had been dismissed as a mere slave had become the key to their survival. In the days that followed, Karzun called a gathering of the court. Valera stood at the center, walking freely without assistance, her posture upright and confident. Humans and aliens alike were present, the former now respected and even celebrated for their contributions. Karzun spoke, his voice carrying both authority and humility. Today, we have learned a lesson that some of us were too proud or too blind to see. Strength is not measured only in force, speed, or fear. It is measured in perseverance, ingenuity, and the ability to lift others when they cannot rise alone. Valera's eyes shone as she looked at Elia's. He had taught her, guided her, and shown her that weakness was only temporary when paired with effort, intelligence, and courage. We have also learned that every being has potential, Karzun continued, his gaze sweeping across the court. Every human here, once considered weak or insignificant, has proven that they can contribute, adapt, and protect. Today, humanity has shown that its strength lies not in domination, but in resilience and ingenuity. The human captives were formally recognized, given not only freedom but also tools, training, and a chance to continue learning and contributing to the world around them. Elias, true to his character, did not seek titles or rewards. He continued teaching, guiding, and innovating, focused on helping as many humans as possible. Valera remained by his side, her leadership growing, her confidence unshakable. Together, they demonstrated that cooperation, trust, and patience could achieve what brute force alone never could. Over time, other systems in the galaxy began to hear of the events at Karzun's court. Stories spread of the human who had guided an alien princess from helplessness to strength, of the humans who had turned the tide against an invading fleet, and of a warlord who had learned that power was more than dominance. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. Some sent envoys to observe, learn, and perhaps even adopt similar practices. Elias' methods and teachings began to influence a broader audience, showing that ingenuity and heart could create change more enduring than conquest. Valera herself became a symbol across her people. Once seen as fragile and dependent, she was now celebrated for her courage, intelligence, and leadership. She advocated for education, opportunity, and collaboration, ensuring that all beings, human or alien, could realize their potential. Her bond with Elias was widely recognized as extraordinary, not only because of what he had taught her, but because of the respect, trust, and partnership that defined their relationship. One afternoon, as they walked together in the gardens, Valera spoke with quiet reflection. "I used to think my life was limited by what I could not do. Now I see that it was limited only by what I believed about myself." Elias nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. "Humans know that feeling. We are not the strongest in appearance, but we are survivors. We learn, adapt, and create solutions where others see none. You have done the same and more." The warlord, observing from a distance, felt a sense of pride that he had rarely experienced. He had given his daughter to a human expecting humiliation, yet what he had witnessed was transformation. not just of Valera, but of humans, the court, and even himself. His view of the galaxy had changed. Strength, he now understood, was as much about intelligence, compassion, and persistence as it was about physical power. Months passed, and the human community under Elia's guidance grew stronger, more skilled, and more confident. They became an integral part of Karzun's operations, not as tools of labor but as valued contributors. Valera continued to explore her limits, learning new skills, practicing strategy, and developing her leadership. The bond between teacher and student, human and alien, had matured into a partnership that inspired everyone around them. The story of Elia's ward and Valera reached beyond Karzun's system. Across the galaxy, species began to reconsider the assumptions they had made about humans. Reports of intelligence, ingenuity, and the ability to overcome challenges spread quickly. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen in a new light, not for their strength in battle alone, but for their persistence, creativity, and ability to inspire transformation in others. Valera often reflected on how much she had grown. She could move freely, think independently, and lead confidently. She had experienced fear, doubt, and uncertainty, but with guidance, trust, and her own effort, she had become someone others could rely upon. Elias, humble as ever, reminded her that the journey never truly ended. There was always more to learn, more to teach, and more ways to make a difference. One evening, as the twin suns set over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the palace grounds, Valera and Elias walked side by side. The humans in the courtyard were practicing new skills, building and learning. Alien nobles observed, some with curiosity, some with newfound respect. The atmosphere had shifted from one of judgment to one of collaboration, understanding, and mutual growth. Valera turned to Elias, a quiet smile on her face. "I never imagined my life could be like this." He shook his head gently. "Neither did I, but sometimes the universe gives us the chance to show what we are truly capable of. Strength is more than force. It is effort, persistence, and the courage to rise when others expect you to fall." As night fell and the stars emerged, the palace and its grounds glowed with life, learning, and possibility. The galaxy had underestimated humans, yet here they stood, proving that intelligence, ingenuity, and heart could reshape worlds. Valera had risen beyond expectation. Elias had guided not through dominance, but through partnership. And together they had created a future where limits were challenged, assumptions were questioned, and the potential of every being, human or alien, could shine. In the quiet of the evening, Valera looked to the stars, no longer bound by fear or doubt. She could walk, run, lead, and inspire. She had been underestimated, but now she stood as a living testament to resilience, partnership, and the unexpected power of humanity. And in that moment, the galaxy understood something profound. The greatest strength was not in the conqueror's might, but in the human heart, capable of lifting others, defying expectation, and creating a future brighter than any force of war could achieve. Months had passed since Valera had first taken independent steps, and the palace was no longer the same place it had been. The humans, once prisoners, were now skilled collaborators. They helped design new tools, maintain the palace's defenses, and teach other species, citizens, to think creatively and solve problems. Valera walked confidently among them, her presence inspiring respect and admiration. Elias continued to guide her, not as a master, but as a mentor and partner, sharing human principles of ingenuity, patience, and perseverance. The court, too, had changed. Aliens who once scoffed at humans began to see them in a new light. The nobles whispered in private meetings about the unexpected power of patience, intelligence, and cooperation. Karzun watched silently, feeling a strange satisfaction. He had always valued strength and fear as tools of rule, yet he now understood that a different kind of power existed, one that could not be commanded or forced, but earned through guidance, trust, and effort. Valera had grown beyond what anyone could have predicted. She no longer needed support devices for everyday movement, though she sometimes used them to challenge herself in exercises or navigate difficult terrain. She had learned strategy, diplomacy, and leadership. She was no longer simply Karzun's daughter. She had become a symbol of what could be achieved when limitations were challenged and effort was applied. Her confidence inspired both humans and aliens alike. One morning, as Elias and Valera walked along the elevated walkways of the palace, scouts arrived with urgent news. A fleet from a distant system, notorious for raiding unprepared worlds, had set its sights on Karzun's domain. The aliens expected panic, but Elias saw an opportunity to apply strategy over sheer force. He quickly organized a plan, drawing on human ingenuity and the skills of the newly empowered humans. Valera took charge alongside him, coordinating teams, directing logistics, and ensuring that all actions were precise. Humans worked to strengthen defenses, set up automated systems, and design non-lethal deterrents that could protect the palace without unnecessary destruction. Aliens followed their guidance, slowly learning that strategy and intelligence could sometimes achieve more than overwhelming force. The palace transformed into a well-prepared stronghold, one where collaboration and ingenuity replaced fear and brute power. When the enemy fleet arrived, they found themselves confronted not by panic, but by careful planning. Automated barriers, decoy systems, and clever reroutes of energy flows slowed their advance. Humans and aliens worked together seamlessly, coordinating from different points of observation. The invaders tried to exploit weaknesses, but every attempt was countered with precision. What had once been a vulnerable target was now a fortress of cooperation and intelligence. Karzun observed the scene from the command hall, a mix of awe and satisfaction in his expression. His daughter, once considered weak, moved confidently among the teams, giving instructions and making decisions. Elias coordinated the human participants with calm authority, ensuring that everyone understood their role and how to apply their skills. For the first time, Karzun saw a form of power that did not rely on fear, intimidation, or raw strength. This power was earned through preparation, trust, and collaboration. The invaders eventually retreated, unable to overcome the unexpectedly sophisticated defenses. The humans had not only survived, they had turned the tide, demonstrating that intellect and planning could rival even the most powerful fleets. The alien nobles could hardly believe their eyes. The humans, once prisoners, had become indispensable contributors to the security of the court. Karzun, normally reserved in praise, felt a deep pride for the human and his daughter, both of whom had changed the fate of his realm. In the aftermath, Karzun called a council meeting. Valera stood beside him, her posture proud and commanding. "We have witnessed a new kind of strength," he declared. "Strength that does not rely on fear, but on understanding, preparation, and the willingness to lift others when they falter. The humans among us have proven that the greatest victories can come from the most unexpected sources." Valera stepped forward, addressing the court with confidence. "I was once limited by what others believed I could do," she said. "Now I know that limitations exist only until we challenge them. Humans and aliens alike have the potential to rise, to learn, and to make a difference. We should never underestimate what effort, collaboration, and belief in each other can achieve." The human participants, standing together for the first time in public recognition, received applause from the court. They had once been captives, dismissed as weak and expendable. Now they were valued contributors, teachers, and examples of what humans could achieve when given opportunity and trust. Elias stood among them, quietly observing, satisfied that the efforts of himself and his students were making a lasting impact. The transformation of the court continued beyond the immediate threat. Humans trained others in engineering, problem-solving, and strategic planning. Valera led teams in projects that enhanced the palace's infrastructure, improved resource management, and strengthened communication with neighboring systems. Aliens, initially skeptical, began to embrace these lessons, recognizing the value of diverse perspectives and approaches. Karzun watched these developments, realizing that the true strength of his domain was no longer measured solely by armies or weapons, but by the intelligence, skill, and cooperation of its people. Valera and Elias continued to explore new frontiers. They traveled beyond the palace, observing neighboring planets and systems, assessing how their approach could improve lives elsewhere. They taught humans and aliens to think critically, adapt to challenges, and collaborate effectively. Communities began to thrive under these lessons, showing that what had started in one court could spread across the galaxy. One evening, as they walked through the gardens under the glow of twin moons, Valera spoke softly. "I never imagined I could feel this capable, this free. I thought my life was limited by what others expected of me." Elias smiled. "Strength is not what others think it is. It comes from effort, persistence, and the courage to face challenges. You have learned that, and now you can help others see it too." Valera nodded, understanding the truth of his words. She had grown far beyond the fragile girl she had once been. Her life was no longer defined by limitations, but by possibilities. Together, she and Elias had created not only freedom for themselves, but also opportunity for countless others. The human community continued to expand its influence. Humans taught aliens new methods for problem-solving, resource management, and strategic planning. Aliens who had once believed humans to be fragile now regarded them as innovators, collaborators, and respected equals. The palace had become a center of learning and advancement, attracting attention from neighboring systems who wished to observe, learn, and perhaps replicate these successes. Valera led by example, demonstrating that limitations could be challenged and surpassed. She encouraged every being under her guidance to explore their abilities, think critically, and collaborate with others. Her leadership inspired confidence and respect, not through fear or dominance, but through example, wisdom, and encouragement. The galaxy began to take notice. Word spread of the human who had guided an alien princess from helplessness to independence, and of the court that had embraced a new model of strength based on cooperation and intelligence. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity, recognizing that humans were capable of far more than brute strength or survival instincts alone. One day, as Valera and Elias watched a group of humans and aliens collaborate on a complex engineering project, Karzun approached them. His usual commanding presence was softened by an unusual expression of pride. "You have done what I never thought possible," he said. "Not only has my daughter grown beyond expectation, but humanity has shown a power that cannot be measured in force alone. You have changed the way we see strength." Elias nodded, his calm demeanor unchanged. "Strength is not only in power. It is in persistence, intelligence, and the courage to lift others. Humanity has always known this, and now you see it as well." Valera smiled, grateful not only for Elias' guidance, but for the opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities. She had grown from a girl confined by her limitations into a leader capable of inspiring change across species. The bond between teacher and student, human and alien, had evolved into a partnership that shaped the future of the court and beyond. As the sun set, casting golden light over the palace and its gardens, Valera reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She had faced doubt, fear, and limitation, yet she had risen beyond them. Elias had guided her not through dominance, but through trust, patience, and insight. Together, they had created a legacy of empowerment, intelligence, and collaboration. The galaxy had once underestimated humans, dismissing them as weak or fragile. Now, humans were seen as innovators, problem solvers, and contributors to progress. Valera had transformed not only herself, but also the perceptions of countless others. She had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the potential within all beings to rise beyond expectation. Elias and Valera continued their work, exploring, teaching, and guiding others. Their partnership, built on respect, trust, and shared purpose, became a model for interspecies cooperation across the galaxy. The palace, once a place of judgment and expectation, now thrived as a center of learning, growth, and opportunity. In the quiet moments, as Valera walked through the gardens beneath the starlit sky, she felt not only freedom but a sense of responsibility. She had learned that strength was not given, but earned. She had discovered that human ingenuity and persistence could change lives, transform communities, and inspire entire civilizations. And in that stillness, she realized that the greatest power in the galaxy was not force, nor conquest, nor fear, but the human heart, capable of lifting others, defying expectation, and creating a future where every being could rise to their potential.